Hey, everybody, welcome to our introduction episode to How Did They Do? Our breakdown of how the Yahoo pre-ranks did during this most recent season, comparing the final preseason rank board, the one that was put out on, I believe it was October 20th or something like that this past year, against their final rankings at season's end. And why we bothered to do it. Today, we're not going to get into what we actually learned from any individual thing. Instead, this episode, and we do one like this every year, it's like an 18 to 20 minute episode, short one. Happy Wednesday, everybody. It's going to be a short one today. Is just a quick. There was a year where I tried to jam the intro and the first part of our analysis all into one episode, and then I ended up finding myself rushing through all of it. So instead, we're just going to meander our way through the intro today. And then tomorrow's episode, which, by the way, is going to be the last episode of the week. There will not be an episode on Friday this week. I'm going out of town for about 48 hours or so. And it's the first time I'm going out of town by myself for more than 24 calendar hours. I don't know what a calendar hour is. It's a made-up expression that I just started today. One time, like 2.5 years ago, I played golf in Pasadena and slept in Pasadena, and then I drove home the next morning. That was the longest I've been gone by myself since my oldest son was born 8.5 years ago. Whoops. And it's not that I'm concerned about it in any way. It's just that I handle a lot of the stuff on the home front. So let's see what happens. As far as today goes, and again, all of this came about because I was letting you guys that there's no show on Friday. There will be a show tomorrow. This is what we're working with. So this is an Excel spreadsheet that I've been screwing around with since 2016. If you zoom in, that's the number down on the bottom left there. It's got the 2016 season. Does not have the 17 season. I don't really know why. 18, 19, 20, 21. Lost 22. That was when my hard drive cooked. 23, and then this year 24. There are two parts to this board. I haven't filled out the totals side yet because I just wanted to get this done and then start talking about it. And basically, this is what you're looking at right now. So the leftmost column, obviously, is the player ranks sorted by their final preseason rank. This is the top 100. I could have gone deeper, but you guys know that once you hit the edge of the top 100, nothing you do from that point matters. Their final per game rank. So, someone like an Anthony Davis is number 4, even though he missed a bunch of basketball this season. The average per 5, basically a running sort of lagging indicator of the final preseason or final end of season rank. The difference between that final preseason rank and the final rank, the absolute value of the difference, a live sum, live average, live absolute value sum, a live absolute value average, a per 10, which is the difference, a running 10 on the difference average, and a running 10 on the absolute value average. The reason that we have all these different columns is that each one tells us something new. And that's what we're talking about on today's show. Basically, why do I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 columns with numbers in it? Although, obviously, the first two are kind of simple. So on today's show, we're going to go through all 11 columns, and we're going to tell you why they matter and what we're going to learn from them as we look through them over the next couple of days. Column 1 is the starting rank. That's an easy one. It's just a way to, because Yahoo changes their ranks in season, they do a re-rank. I was talking to Josh Lloyd about this. His hypothesis, and it's the best one that I've heard from anybody on it, is that Yahoo has leagues where they continue to draft, and so they have to retool their pre-rank board based on guys that are doing way better or way worse at the start of the season, or if somebody gets hurt, they basically just yank them off the board. And so that pre-rank, which really should be from pre-season, gets changed to whenever it was the last time that they adjusted it for upcoming drafts. Feh. This was, I'm going through my board. When was the last time I updated this? 10/17. It was October 17th. So it's the pre-ranks from October 17th this year. I think the 18th was opening night. Last year, the opening night was 22nd. They all run together. Final per game rank. So this is their 9-cat ranking per game, not totals. 9-cat, not 8-cat, not points league. There is no punt involved in this if you'd like to do that. And we'll make some adjustments for, someone like a Giannis who, was number 41 on Yahoo final rankings. But obviously, if you drafted Giannis in the middle of the first round, you were likely then punting free throws. So as we go through, don't worry, we'll look at the numbers with and without some of these obvious punt guys in the mix. The average per 5, which I couldn't think of there's a better way to list it, but that's the way that fit in an Excel cell. The average per 5 is just a running average of the final per game rank over the last 5 players, meaning basically, does it tell us anything? Not a ton, but you can see that dips up, comes down, dips up, comes down. You can kind of see how different chunks of players were doing in the draft as opposed to just individual players. And it does pull out some of the aberrations, the anomalies, like a Lauri Markkanen who was drafted at 28. I still don't know why, given the whole tanking team thing. Finished at 90, and that only impacts this particular category for the next 4 players, and then his number comes back out of the bucket again. The difference, this is a pretty easy one to understand. We are subtracting the final rank from the starting rank. So if the starting rank, Giannis being an example, is 7, final rank in 9-cat without a punt is 41. I don't have -1 rankings on here. The difference is -34. So Yahoo was technically 34 slots too high. Again, I'm not saying that's the case with Giannis. He's a punt play. A better example would be someone like Scotty Barnes, who was drafted at 17, finished at 57, not because of any one specific punt, just because he wasn't that good this year. And so there's a -40 right there. That's that. The difference column, this is column number 4 out of 11, is noted with positive and negative values. A big positive number is a big sleeper, basically, or a big win on draft night. Column 5 coming up after we remind you guys to check out our buddies at Bet Online. It's a big day if you're a Laker fan. It's also a terrifying day. Lakers are a 6-point home favorite. I would probably bet Minnesota at that number. I don't think the Lakers are winning a blowout, but maybe not. Maybe they just catch fire and beat them up something fierce, and Minnie figures, we're up big. Just doesn't strike me that way. Houston, 4-point favorites at home. They missed their chance to win in the last ball game. That was the Rockets game. They had it. Everything they did suggested they should have won it. I think I'd take the underdogs in both of these things. Lakers, Wolves, do we think that one has a chance to maybe go over? I don't know, man. When a team's back up against the wall, the only reason I would think maybe over is a lot of fouling at the end. But if the game is close within, 1-2 possessions with a minute to go, there isn't going to be a bunch of fouling until the very last second. So, you know me, I like to play unders as series go. That's the way I would lean on these underdogs and unders typically. And that's gets you started. Bet Online. Bet Online is where you do it. Baseball's in full swing. You got the playoffs we just talked about. NHL playoffs are rolling right now. I'm told they're extremely exciting. I don't watch them, though. But look, Bet Online has the latest odds, news, scores, even live in-game betting. I'm not quite degenerate enough to live in-game betting on the Lakers because my sphincter's too puckered up about that. But you can if you want. All at Bet Online. And if you want something to do now while you're waiting for the games to start, head to the Bet Online casino with all the top Vegas-style games, tens, double digits, different styles of blackjack, poker, live casino games, slot games. It's all there. Bet Online. The game starts here. The absolute value is the next column that we have on our board. Why do we have that instead of the difference? Well, because the difference, when we start to compute the sums of these, this is a more important, The absolute value column is actually more important for sort of later computations on this board. It's just going to tell you the total miss size. So it's not worried about whether or not Yahoo got it way too high or way too low, because like there's this sort of innate feeling of, oh, like I got a big win on this player. That's also a big miss by the pre-rank board. And to me, the absolute value actually probably tells a better story, which is how big are the misses in any individual range. So then you have the next two columns, the live sum, which is a sum of the difference column. You have kind of the next four that all tend to kind of clump together into one big discussion. So let's go piece by piece. I was going to try to mush a couple of them together, but I realized that actually, there's no reason. We have time. This is going to be a short show regardless, so I don't need to smush columns together. So the live sum column is, as we mentioned, a running sum of the difference, not the absolute value. This is just the straight difference with positive and negative values. So what you get there is, looking near the top of the board, the sum is going to climb into the negatives pretty quickly because you can't really beat an early pre-rank, at least not by more than a couple. Luka Doncic, -3. Oh no. Shea, Anthony Davis, Tyrese Halliburton were all positive ones. Like, what does that really get us? When you get to the end of the sixth player, it gets you a 0, actually, that the sum of the differences actually zeroes out. But what this does sort of long term is it tells you how is the Yahoo board trending. Are you going to get a lot of misses in a row? Are they all going to be in the negative direction, which usually you're going to get out to a pretty good negative direction start. And then there's often a little bit of a leveling because you're going to have some hits in the third, fourth round. If you don't have any massive misses, the number might not climb as fast as early on, for instance. So end of the first round, it's a -82 on this board, although again, it's a 0 after 6 names. So that's pretty good. Then it jumps all the way to -248 after the second round. Slows down a little bit after that. Only jumps to 350. Then it jumps to 408. Then there's a pretty big drop off, and it starts to climb pretty fast after that. So you can see that kind of leveling where you get some positive misses in the third, fourth round or whatever. And this is going to help us find where those occur. More importantly, the average of that sum. That's the next column. That's column number 7 on this board, at least numerically column number 7, is the live average of the sum divided by how many players have been drafted at that point. So again, using an example on our board here, if you get as far as Steph Curry, who was the 13th player, the live sum was -125 at that point, even though, again, he was actually a +2 that shrunk it. But then you're going to do -125 over 13, which is, again, like how far along in the board we are. And so the live average there is -9.62. So the average miss size for the Yahoo pre-rank board is to be 9.62 slots too early for most of these players. And again, that doesn't really tell us all that much in the early going because Giannis screws up the number a little bit. But you also have Trae Young in there, who was a double punt guy. And, I mean, you can take one out if you want, but you can't take both. And Joel Embiid, who was just bad when he played and a non-factor overall. Just wait until you see what the impact is that Embiid has on the total side later on. So we can't take all these guys out, but obviously that would be a smaller number. Because look, like, not everybody can be 10 slots too low. It's just the way, or too high, rather. You can't push all these guys back. It's just that 2, 3, 4 guys in the mix are mucking up the numbers. And don't worry, that's why we have some running, lagging indicator type columns coming up that will remove those aberrations as you go, even though other aberration guys probably get dropped into the mix. Next two columns deal with the absolute value, the sum of the absolute value, which is going to be bigger because there's no positives and negative canceling each other out. Where in the difference column, if you have Jalen Brunson, who's a -30, and then the next few picks are -10, +8, +8, 0, +15, +15, that basically wipes out on the straight difference side. The difference actually becomes a smaller in magnitude number. It's actually a bigger number, but it's a negative that's getting smaller, if that makes sense. On the absolute value side, a miss is a miss. It doesn't matter if it's positive or negative, a miss is a miss. So Chet Holmgren being 27 slots too high has the same impact as let's see, who was a nice positive we can pull out of here. Yeah, I mean, it's Kawhi. As Kawhi being 24 slots too low on a per game side. But for absolute value, that doesn't matter. So the absolute value number is going to jump quicker. It's all misses, regardless of direction, summed, and then the average of that sum, which, by the way, in my eyes, these last three columns are the most important ones. Because these are the columns, not that just that we're going to necessarily focus on the most, because we're going to look at everything a little bit, but these are the ones that we're going to sort of land on near the end, specifically this one and the very last one. So the penultimate, is that third from last? The penultimate is probably, the bronze trophy in this. And then the ultimate, the very last one, is maybe a tie for first between the third to last and the last columns. So the third to last column is the absolute value average as you go. It's very similar to the way that the absolute or the sum average was calculated, but instead it's using that live absolute value total as you go. I know this is a particularly dry episode. We're going to be done in the next 3 to 5 minutes. Don't worry. The next episode will talk more about actual stuff and what we are learning. I always feel like I need to apologize at the end of this show. But this is where you should really lock in. If you've been sort of half paying attention to the show so far, this is the part where you want to pay closer attention. The live absolute value average is telling us the average miss size at every position on the board as it goes. Okay? I don't know if that made total sense, but I hope that it did. It's a number that can shrink as, for instance, if you have some misses that are smaller than that running average already. So that's a way that this number can actually come down, in the way that the sum of the absolute values is always going to keep going up. But you continue to divide it by a larger and larger number. So if there's a spot on the board where the Yahoo pre-ranks were generally fairly accurate, which I think this year would be like between picks 21 and about 29. There was a pretty good stretch there where they were doing okay. The absolute value average running got smaller over that stretch. Does that mean that it's always going to stay that way? We don't know. We have to analyze it looking year over year over year. Is the third round historically a particularly accurate part of the draft? That would be cool to know. And that's the type of stuff that we can look at because we have 7 years worth of data on this. Although I don't know that I did all of these columns at the very beginning. I think we have the last 2, 3, or 4 years of this type of data. We can actually look at that and say, hey, as you get towards the end of draft season, this is where the board tends to be the most accurate. And that will shape your decision making. And it should, because if you're looking at this board and you got to Devin Booker at pre-rank of 19 and you're like, oh, this is a part of the board where like the guys taking shots in the middle of the second round that maybe don't pan out. Now you get into these guys, and was that Josh also on this show? I can't remember who was on this show that was like, look, you get to the end of the first round and then you have 20 third rounders. That's basically what's happening here, is because a bunch of those guys you have to take earlier, they don't pan out, and the rest of them are extraordinarily accurate. And that's why between Booker and De'Aaron Fox this last year, 19 to 27 is the list there. Was that 9 players? The average absolute value miss size shrinks from 15.3 down to 14. It just gets smaller because there's a run of relatively accurate names. Second to last column is the per 10. This is taking the difference, and instead of just doing an average of it, we are doing an average, but only over 10. So instead of all of the differences, which was the live average column, that's column V on the board you're looking at, that's just all of them. The per 10 only looks at the most recent 10 names. So if there's a stretch of really bad ones, like the second round one this year, well, up until Jalen Brunson, basically, there's a bunch of really bad names there. That's all the way up as high as 21 in that live average per 10, because it takes out the early ones that were pretty successful, but then also gets a lot better once you get into that run in the second round we just talked about, where a lot of the players were much better. Perhaps more and most importantly, the absolute value per 10. This is a cool thing to compare against the live absolute value, where you're now looking at a chunk, basically like not quite a round, because a round would be 12 for most of us, but some of you play in 10-team leagues, but basically like a round's worth of players. How is the last round performing to this year and then historically? And you can see there are spots as I slowly scroll through this board you're looking at where the last 10 are pretty accurate, even as you move down into the 50s and the 60s. And you'll also notice that these numbers start to jump considerably at the area we've always, over the years, called no man's land. Yes, that's right. The absolute value, that last 10 number, whether you want to look at the just straight absolute value average miss size, or you want to look at the last 10, it grows, and it grows faster when you get to around player 65 or 70. All of a sudden, that last 10 starts to look kind of rough, and that absolute value average number starts to jump, because for a long time, it sits basically between 15 and 19, 15 and 20, if you want to call it that. And then right around pick 65, 21, 22, 23, kind of stays around 23 for a little bit, 24, 25, 26, 29, 31. And then you get the same data basically from the last 10 column, where all of a sudden the miss size is 60, 55, 60. So there are very clear points, even just from a 1-year data size, that show you this is where nobody really knows what's about to happen. And we're going to look at all of that stuff and then some as we work our way through the how did they do portion of the proceedings, including, but not limited to, tomorrow's show, which is where we're going to go from now. Managed to get this one done in 22 minutes. I'm so sorry. We have to do this show once a year. I know it's terribly boring. It's not good television. It's barely better than that on radio. I get it. I know. But I'm Dan Besbris, and it's over. Stay tuned. We'll be back with you again tomorrow, where we'll actually start to break some of this stuff down and see what we can learn from it. Thanks for watching this one, everybody. I know it's like going to the dentist's office. See you guys for the next one.